Folks, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm meeting with legislators from around the world, 40 different countries, so you'll have to forgive the tie, those of you who can't get beyond that. And stay tuned today. It's just unbelievable, some of the things that you are going to be hearing as we do the broadcast today. Of course, Prime Minister Carney, what he's done in terms of religious liberties in Canada. We're going to hear, did you ever guess you'd hear about a link between Japan and Iran when it comes to same-sex issues? And we're going to talk about some of the Democratic wins in the United States. And how about Taylor Swift being accused of being a Nazi? It's crazy time, folks. Stay tuned. Here we are last night. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. But last night in Canada, in Ottawa, the Prime Minister at a late night committee session forced through an amendment to that was going to be the Constitution of the country in terms of taking away certain religious exemptions provided when it comes to freedom of speech. That's huge. He might be the first leader in the democratic free world to do that. Even President Putin wouldn't have the nerve to do such a thing. So it's going to go to third reading, as they call it in Canada. We'll see if it passes. Maria Machado, just a dramatic situation related to her. As you recall, we've been talking about her for a while. She's the opposition leader in Venezuela, went into hiding after she actually, by most accounts, won the last election, but Maduro did not accept it. She has to be in hiding to preserve and protect her own life. She got the Nobel Peace Prize this year was awarded to her. It was thought she was going to make it to Norway to receive it, but she will be arrested either coming in or out of the country. And so her sister is receiving it. And once again, I really think, I just can't say this strongly enough, mainstream media outlets around the world, we're talking about CBC in Canada, CNN in the US, BBC, the small amount of attention that they are giving to this brave and courageous woman, this opposition leader, it's actually terrible the way she gets ignored just because she is a small c conservative and not a left-leaning liberal or socialist. And they almost completely ignore her. They give her some attention. I've been posting on this earlier today, and CBC finally has done a story about her, and I give them some credit for that. But just incredible. If you are a female, a woman in politics today, you remember the Prime Minister in New Zealand, and she was so popular, just the media swooned just everywhere she went in the world. She was the number one face of womanhood everywhere, and she was very significant socialist, left-leaning, got all kinds of attention. But if you are center or center-right in your philosophies and you are a woman, you are going to get largely ignored by mainstream cultural Marxist media. It's terrible. So Japan and Iran coming to not working on this together, but just yesterday we saw two amazing congruences here. Japan's High Court in Tokyo has ruled that they are going to uphold the ban on same-sex marriage. Now, the reason they are doing that, for among a number of reasons, is they are looking at their plummeting birth rates, and they're just doing the math. They are not replacing themselves, just like most democratic countries in the Western world are not, and they feel that by acknowledging same-sex marriage, that's going to be an even further inhibitor, because obviously same-sex people cannot bear children, not together, from actions between the two of them anyway. And so that's one of the reasons they say they're keeping it. But at the same time, Iran and Egypt have come forward, and this is related to FIFA. This is the International Football Association. As you know, every 4 years they have the huge contest. And just yesterday we saw in Washington, down in the United States, they drew for who was going to be playing in what order. And one of the things that just emerged just now is that there is going to be some kind of a demonstration game for everybody to watch at FIFA at the World Cup, and it's going to be gay players, I guess. It's going to be a pride demonstration of soccer, or football as they call it. And Iran and Egypt, and there may be other Islamist nations joining them, are saying, whoa, wait a minute, look, we're all into this, we all love soccer, we're going to play it, but this is advancing a political cause and something that we as Islamists don't agree on. So there's Japan, Iran, Egypt, all coming out with comments relative to same-sex marriage. Is quite an interesting time. At the same time as President Trump, of course, they were hosting it was their year to host the FIFA draw for the tournament in the United States. But he blasted, this is very recent, just blasted most of the European leaders for being weak, for allowing uninhibited immigration, especially of illegal people, much as we saw in the United States, lawbreakers and criminals that are not citizens, not being deported out of the European countries, and huge problems, of course, in the UK with the so-called grooming gangs, and then the huge difficulties throughout European countries. And he's saying, you folks are weak. You've got to stand up. You've got to start defending your own borders. That got a lot of negative attention, and we're going to see what all comes from that. So some real international furor, I'll say that word very carefully, going on there. Food prices are continuing to be a source of attention in Canada and in the United States. Now, in the U.S., thankfully, President Trump has taken the tariff off a couple of main food items, and right away we saw the price of those drop, because tariffs always increase prices in products. That's why I've never been a fan of tariffs. But in Canada, the food prices are staying stubbornly high or getting higher, and you need to keep in mind that the single greatest reason, there's other factors too, but for the inflationary rise of products is governments dumping or spending borrowed money and just dumping it into the economy. That always causes prices to rise, and that's what's happening in Canada. So please keep in mind, anytime you see an elected person, I don't care if they're liberal or conservative or socialist, whatever it might be, but when politicians are making promises and spending money that is borrowed money on the markets, it always causes prices to go up. So when you hear your prime minister or your president making a promise about giving you free money, just picture the price of eggs, picture the price of meat, picture the price of bread and other things going up, because that's what happens, the single greatest reason for price increases. In Alberta, we see again the premier there, Danielle Smith. Again, what I was saying earlier about women, mainstream media, they just can't handle her because she's a small c conservative in her thinking. She's not culturally Marxist. So she's announced again there's going to be another time when they will, for the fourth time, use what's called in Canada the notwithstanding clause. That was developed way back in 1981. We've talked about it before on the show, but as a quick reminder, the Western provinces were not going to be signing on to the new patriation of the Constitution of Canada. They weren't going to be signing on to the Charter Rights and Freedoms unless they had some protection from activist courts, left-leaning courts that would overrule laws that were brought up and put in place by elected people. And so Prime Minister Trudeau of the day agreed for there be an allowance of this notwithstanding clause. It simply means that if under certain conditions, not all, if under some conditions, there was a law that was going to be invoked or created by activist judges that was going to be harmful to the interests of a particular province, that province could say, notwithstanding what the Supreme Court said, we're putting this on hold for 5 years. So they wouldn't have the ability to overrule the Supreme Court. They would just say, we're going to put it on hold for 5 years. Of course, media, culturally Marxist mainstream media in Canada, go completely berserk on the thought that anybody could dare dream of challenging the wisdom of judges. And so here was a legal way to do it, a legal way to have discussion between the balancing powers in a democracy, between the courts, between the legislative bodies and the executive bodies. And Premier Smith has announced now there could be a fourth time that she may invoke this. Media has gone berserk in Canada. But you know what? When Quebec uses it, and I'm going to be honest, folks, without searching it right now, I have lost track of the number of times that Quebec has used and continues to use the notwithstanding clause, but media hardly touch them for that. That is sacred ground. It's Quebec, and we don't want to upset those folks in Quebec. So tremendous bias here by culturally Marxist media, and we'll watch and we'll see where that goes. In terms of battles that are going on, the battles of left and right, In the United States, we see another example now, and the most recent case, the city of Miami just voted in a Democrat mayor, a severe left-leaning socialist mayor, over a conservative or Republican candidate. This has not happened in Miami since 1997 was the last time they had a Democrat mayor. And, it just seems that the allure of free stuff, of promising free stuff, especially, unfortunately, to Gen Z, to anybody in late teens, 20s, and 30s, it's just irresistible, and people will vote for those who promise them free things, even though it drives up what, as we said earlier, price of inflation. Now, I know that it was, they said it was a low turnout there, but it just shows, folks, you need to be involved in municipal elections, in your school board elections, state elections or provincial elections, and of course national or federal elections. The numbers are there for clear thinking, common sense people to win these elections, but they've got to show up. The left will show up in greater numbers. They're much more intense, much more focused, and promising many more free things. So you've just got to show up, folks, or you're going to continue to lose in these particular areas. Now, the markets have been a little bit jittery the last couple of days, waiting for that announcement from the Feds in terms of the lowering of the interest rate. But here's something interesting. There was a slight dip in the markets generally in the Dow Jones, and that's, as we've said before, if you have some huge companies and they take up a large percentage of the entire market, the Dow Jones indicator, when they move up or down, that moves the whole market up or down. And what happened yesterday was JP Morgan, in their quarterly results, they reported honestly, but they had to, and it wasn't great news, that their expenses for the year ahead were going to go up 10%. And right away, investors go, whoa, if there's a big company like that's going to increase expenses 10%, that's going to mean less profits. And so people started moving money away from JP Morgan and investing other places. That's natural. The point I want us to look at here, when huge companies spend more money, that always results in them being punished in the marketplace. But when governments spend more money, they rarely wind up getting punished for it. And we need to look at this just as we would a large corporation. Governments are large corporations. If they keep increasing the money supply and forcing prices upwards, they should pay a penalty for that. And again, we have the power to do it. But do you want more free stuff, or do you just want to see this debt problem keep getting pushed off? JP Morgan, expenses up 10%. They dropped 4.7% in terms of the value of their stock. Let's punish governments the same way. Well, Taylor Swift is getting punished. There's this ridiculous stuff going out on the internet that she is either Nazi or has Nazi inclinations. Now, the crazy things that are being pointed to in her large amount of jewelry that's for sale, and you can go online and get it. There's one item, there's a necklace, and I guess there's something on that necklace that looks like a thunderbolt. And people are saying, well, the thunderbolt insignia was used by the SS, the deadly secret police of Hitler and the Nazis in the Third Reich. And so, her organization must be having Nazi leanings. This is insanity, folks. And then there was that picture that circulated of her. She's at the piano and she's playing away and she's raising one arm as performers often do while she's singing. And people are saying, there it is, there's the Nazi salute. Folks, I'm not Taylor Swift's biggest fan. I don't go to her concerts. I couldn't afford to anyway. She is a billionaire and nobody seems to be beating up on her for that. I don't begrudge her billions. I don't begrudge the fact that tickets, because so many people want to go, are out of reach of many low-income young people who want to go. But this thing about spreading that has she got Nazi inclinations, folks, that's insanity. That's crazy. And when people, even if we don't agree with them or particularly like them, if that's the case, I don't know. We have to stand up for each other when ridiculous things like this are happening. Media has come to her protection and is defending her. But isn't it interesting if you have a political figure like, let's say, Donald Trump, being accused of being a Nazi, even though he has Jewish people married into his family, and even though he is in the entire history of the United States the strongest defender of Israel ever, and being accused of a Nazi, then the mainstream media, they just repeat the accusation. They don't rise or run to his defense. Listen, let's go after people for policies of theirs that we know and agree with or disagree with. But when somebody's facing these accusations, let's all stand together and put down the people who are spreading that kind of ridiculous stuff. On the entertainment scene, as we're talking about that, Kevin Costner is riding the wave of the increasing number of movie makers and producers who are going after and looking at faith-based productions. He's got a production out called something to do with the first Christmas. So interesting to see him taking that particular view. And as we report and as we know that the incredibly addictive power of AI and as people being on the internet, we know that across the board, but especially with young people, anxiety levels are going through the roof. And pharmaceutical companies are making nothing but billions of dollars selling antidepressants and anti-anxietants. But every year there is a Bible app, the largest one out there. It's called YouVersion. And they have, some years they'll have 1 billion followers. So every year they produce and they tell everybody what was the most sought after Bible verse of the year across the world. And they've identified it for the year, for this year, for 2025. The prophet Isaiah wrote this many hundreds or a couple of millennia ago, and it's in the 41st chapter, and it's verse 10. For those of you who may be interested, whether you're a person of faith or not, the Bible verse says, "Fear not, I am with you. I am your God." More people seeking out that kind of peace than anybody else on the internet right now. Kind of interesting, folks. Have some peace tonight and stay tuned. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.